Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to our e-seminar series on Translational Biomedical Engineering. This is our first talk of 2021. We are very pleased to host Erik Gatenholm from the CEO of CellLink, a world leader in 3D bioprinting technology. As usual, and before we start, we have a couple of housekeeping notes. First of all, we will record this video and then we will post it on our YouTube channel. Feel free to go back to our YouTube channel and then watch it again if you missed part of the talk. And also share the video with your network, with your friends, and with those who didn't have a chance to participate in this talk today. For those of you who are new to this app, if you have any questions during the talk, please write your question in the question box. There's an ask a question box at the bottom of your screen that you can ask your questions there. There is also a poll that you can participate and then share your thoughts about these e-seminar series with us. Good news, as we promised, and at the end of 2020, we have a list of stellar speakers for the winter of 2021. We will start with Erik, but we will have many great speakers lined up for our e-seminar series. You can see their names on this flyer. So we are very excited to host all of these speakers in the winter, and then we are also putting together a list of speakers for the summer. So it's going to be very exciting year. Particular, our next speaker will be Patrick Bedford, who is a Canadian regulatory expert and the founder and principal consultant at We Can Reg Consulting Group. So he'll give a talk about the nuts and bolts of regulatory approvals and how they can affect translational research. As always, if you want to get up-to-date information about these e-seminar series, please follow us on Twitter or email us. Me and Human and I are basically the organizers, and then Vahid is the coordinator of these seminar series. Last but not least, I would like to thank our sponsors, Montreal Transmed Tech, and then also CellLink, who are supporting these talks and then also the future talks. With that, I would like to invite our speaker, Erik Gatenholm, from the CEO of CellLink. So let me give you a little bit of background about Erik's interesting background. He attended Blacksburg High School and studied business management at Virginia Tech University. I have a few close friends who graduated from Virginia Tech. I heard a lot of good things about, especially their business program over there. At the age of 18, Erik started his first venture as a freshman at Virginia Tech. So it seems that business has been in his blood since the young ages. BC Genesis was the first company that Erik started and focused on developing surgical meshes for hernia repair and cartilage implants. Within 3 years, BC Genesis received 2 National Science Foundation NSF grants with a total amount of $600,000. Also, the company received a $700,000 grant from the Virginia Tobacco Indemnification and Community Revitalization Commission, and was slated to help revive Floyd County economy through the introduction of more job opportunities in biotech. Then in 2014, Erik was introduced to the idea of 3D bioprinting. It's around the same time that I started my postdoc at one of the largest tissue engineering labs in the States. And then at that time, we used to, and similar to other researchers, we used to make our own bioinks in the lab. So you can expect to see that there is basically variations between different patches. So Erik found a gap there in the market. There was a need for new bioinks, more reproducible bioinks, and then he co-founded CellLink in 2016 at the age of 25 years old, pretty young. So since then, CellLink has grown rapidly and then was listed on NASDAQ's First North within 10 months of its founding, and its sales totaled $1 million in the first year. So it's pretty amazing. So Erik has received many awards. Notable awards are MIT Technology Review Magazine's Innovators Under 35 in 2019, Forbes 30 Under 30 in 2018, and Sweden's Young Entrepreneur of the Year in 2016. These are a few awards from a list of awards that he has received. So thank you very much, Erik, for participating in our e-seminar series. I'm sure many of us are very excited to hear your journey and then learn from a successful entrepreneur how you start technology, how to bring it into market, and how to make sure it's the startup is successful. Now the virtual floor is yours.
Thank you so much. What a wonderful introduction. I really appreciate it. And can everybody hear me, or at least most of you? Great. Thank you so much for having me. It's a real pleasure to have this opportunity to present CellLink and our achievements over the last couple of years. And I hope I'll take you guys through an exciting journey. I'm going to try to share my screen. We're going to try to do this again. Let's see if it works. Okay, we're going to close the message. You guys can see my, wow, Inception. There we go. Now, can you guys see my screen? I can't see any chat or any videos right now. I just see my presentation. So if somebody could just unmute and say yes or no.
Yes, Erik.
Yes, got you. Awesome. All right. Thank you so much for having me. My name is Erik, as you said very nicely, Gatenholm. I'm the co-founder and CEO of CellLink. CellLink is the first bioink company in the world and the leading bioprinting business. And I will do a very short introduction because you did a very, very nice introduction of me. So thank you for that. I was born in Sweden, grew up in America. I went to Virginia Tech University, studied business management. I come from a professor family. Father's professor in biomaterials, very, very proud professor, and of course, very, very good upbringing. You know, when my friends and colleagues went on vacation with their families when they were younger, they went to lovely places with nice beaches. Well, I had to go to the conferences, so I was brought all over the world to the Termis and the ACS and all the other great conferences to spend time with professors at a very, very young age. So the academic and the research field for me I'm native to that environment. Passion in life is sales, marketing, and management. And I think that for some of you who are interested in starting businesses and really going into the commercial field, perhaps leaving the academic world, I think picking up an interest or passion for sales is going to be an important aspect for your future career and for your future development. I also have a huge passion for new technology, especially in the life science industry. And I spend a lot of my nights just reading up on cool things that are happening in the field or in other fields where technology development is moving quickly. And of course, very big believer in disruptive technologies and how they can change societies and change the world. Thank you also, of course, we're proud of all the awards that we've received the last couple of years, and these are some of them. It's a little funny here. You see on one of the pictures here, it's a Swedish magazine. We were the founders of the year. It's quite a funny picture, but that's essentially the founding group for the company. Today Selling is a company with about 10 offices, 330 employees, and we have our products in about 1,800 laboratories. And it's, of course, fun to mention that we were started in 2016, so just about 5 years ago. Looking back at it now, we're celebrating our fifth anniversary on the 27th of January. So in just a few days, we'll be 5 years old, and we're really proud and really thankful for where we've come. And it's really due to the amazing field that has grown in conjunction with what we have done. As a company, our vision is to create the future of medicine. And we adopted this very, very bold vision quite early on because for us, we always thought that, it was go big or go home. It's perhaps from the kind of educational background that I have from Virginia Tech or just from perhaps even managing business in the past. But for me, it was always the fact that when you build a company, you have to become the size of Facebook, Google, IBM, Microsoft. There is no in between. So when we started the company, that was essentially the vision that we had, and we wanted to become huge. That was our dream. And to do that, we set a very ambitious goal, and that was to create the future of the medicine industry. And we do that as our mission is to create the future of medicine by providing essentially technologies, products, and services to create, understand, and master biology. And it's important to mention these three last words: create, understand, and master, because what we have learned and what I have learned on my journey throughout this is that to be able to revolutionize an industry or really disrupt an industry, you have to do much more than just provide products and services. You have to provide essentially the means to create, understand, and master in an entire area. Because if you don't do that, you risk losing a lot of parts of the value chain that can make a difference for the customer. So I'll get back to this a little bit because I think it's quite fascinating to see how we've grown from just being a company that helps researchers create biology. And of course, creating biology, as we all know, that's, when two people love each other, they create biology. But there is also another way, and that's called bioprinting. And bioprinting is a fascinating industry and a fascinating way of working with materials and revolutionizes really the medical industry as we know it. But it all starts essentially with a very, very common challenge that we all here have in the bioengineering and the biology field. And the fact is that the modern healthcare challenges, they include these three very important aspects. And when I visualize the challenges in the biotech and life science industry, it typically boils down to these three. The first one is it's a very, very expensive and lengthy process to bring a drug to the patient. And the reality is about 9 out of 10 of those drugs, they fail during the clinical stages. This means essentially that pharmaceutical companies are spending billions of dollars, on average actually $2 billion, to develop a new drug, taking it through 2D cell cultures, 3D cell cultures, preclinical trials, mouse models, doing the trials in dogs, in primates, doing trials in patients, and then realizing in the clinical stages when they're doing their patient trials essentially that the drugs fail. It's a huge, unfortunate part of the healthcare industry today because patients, they don't get the drugs, and pharma companies, they waste a lot of money and time. Another challenge in the industry today is that a life is lost every hour of the day due to the lack of organ transplants. And as many of you know who are bioengineers or biologists in the background, you know, the ideal future for us as professionals and also as biotech companies is to be able to provide a means to replace these organs with patient-specific organs that can be implanted, either printed or grown, but somehow manufactured using the patient's own cell. And lastly, animal studies are poor indicators of success for human drug development. And it kind of ties in a little bit with the first aspect there, where we're actually still in 2021 are testing the majority of our pharmaceutical compounds on animals, and in fact on rats and mice. And we expect this to provide us with proof of efficacy for then clinical or patient outcomes. And that strikes me as quite interesting, actually. And these three challenges are the ones that have brought us from where we were back in 2006 into where we are today, and also where we're planning to go as a company. But these are the challenges that essentially me and my founding group are very, very passionate about. And we've learned to work with these challenges and made a commitment to the industry that we will work day and night to provide a solution or some part of the solution to solve these major healthcare challenges. I want to go back in the memory lane a little bit, and I want to look at treatments back in the days. And I think it's important to do that because by looking back, we can learn a lot and try to prevent those mistakes going forward. But if we're looking at essentially just a couple of 100 years ago, we were treating diseases and symptoms essentially like they were mysterious abnormalities. So we see here on the picture, on the left picture here, there's a doctor wearing some kind of cone. There's a nun wearing a book. I don't even know how you do that, but she's wearing a book. You have the patient sitting in his red pants, and the doctor is drilling a hole in the patient's head. And the purpose of this is because the patient had a headache, and they want to release that demonic abnormality. They want to release that demon from the head. Strikes me as quite fascinating. Just a couple of 100 years ago. If you look to the right, the treatment of bad blood was a very common treatment back in the days because doctors or the medical field thought that a lot of diseases were bloodborne, or the illness was stuck in the blood. So if you pour the blood out of the patient, you could treat the patient. So you see the patient sitting there wearing a Santa hat and essentially pouring out his blood. See the doctor's interesting reaction. If we fast forward a couple of 100 years, we're at the 21st century, right? So it's today. And the fact is that we are still treating symptoms. We're still looking at the medical field and we're treating the symptoms, but we're typically not going down to the root cause of the disease or the illness, or the root cause of the if it's a broken leg or broken knee or osteoarthritis, whatever the disease may be, or the malfunction of the bone, for instance, in this scenario, or malfunction of the cartilage. But we're using metal and synthetic materials to essentially solve the biological issues and challenges that we have as humans. And it struck me as quite interesting because for the last couple of decades, there have been a lot of innovations in the biomaterials field and the tissue engineering field that have brought great possibilities for both companies, entrepreneurs, and scientists to bring forward other types of solutions. On the right here, you see a plethora of medications, which is in the U.S. It's kind of the daily life, right? I mean, you're treating your symptoms with a lot of medication, and the doctors they're very happy to prescribe more medication and better medication. And I think that's a little bit of the challenging industry that the world is facing. But I have a belief, and my belief is that in the future, we're going to treat your diseases. And it's not just any diseases, it's going to be patient specific. I believe that we will be finding the drug and the concentration that fits your specific needs and your specific body. And this notion is something that started, I mean, just a few years ago, researchers and scientists started talking about personalized medicine. But we're making great improvements in that industry. And even pharma companies are now hopping on the train and trying to bring this more into reality. So I believe that the drug and pharmaceutical industry is going to make a movement into this area very soon, if they haven't already. And I also believe that printing, both 3D printing and bioprinting, so conventional 3D printing of plastics and metals, will be more widely used for implants and tissue repair. And you see already titanium implants are being printed for implantation, for hip surgeries or knee replacements. But I think that in the future, we will be way more focused on the personalized medicine aspect. And it's quite funny to think about it now. Just a few years ago, many Band-Aid companies came out with Band-Aids in different colors because they understood finally after so many years in business that people have different skin colors. So therefore, perhaps Band-Aids should fit a wider group of population. It's a start. It's a very slow start, but that's the nature of industries and how slowly things move. I want to leave one thing with me here that I want all of you to remember, and this is coming from a very, very early stage of industrial change and industrial revolution. There is a new industry that's coming about, and there's a movement that's happening now in the medical field. Especially bioengineers will be familiar with this because this is not too far away from bioengineering. This new industry is called Bioconvergence, and I was introduced to this concept a few years ago, and it's essentially what we have started to establish ourselves as a company. So Cellink is today the first bioconvergence company, and our plan is to be the leading one moving forward for decades to come. But you may ask yourself, what is bioconvergence and why should I care about it? Well, bioconvergence is essentially an idea or a concept that the major healthcare challenges cannot be solved with simply one technology or a single set of technologies. To solve major healthcare challenges, you have to combine a wide range of disciplines and technologies to really make a big impact and make the impact that we want on patients. So if you see here in this interesting little bit graph here, bioconvergence is all about the combination of data, computing, AI, biomaterials, omics, chemical drugs, biological drugs, biopharma, etc., etc. And a combination of these different things and disciplines is what's going to create the solution for the future healthcare issues. And I believe that essentially these 8 disciplines here are going to have an impact if they work together on the organ printing industry, on the continued omics industry, and on similar large, very, very mass market industries that are coming about. So as a company, we're today present in many of these industries or many of these disciplines, but we're also looking into expanding to additional ones, both through development and acquisitions, of course. So to make this a little bit more clear of what I really mean of bioconvergence, I think we have to look at the auto industry. The auto industry is typically the ones that they take the bold steps into both design and concepts and things like that. And it's quite easy to visually understand how the auto industry is moving. So in this example, you see the brand new Mercedes, and I don't remember I think it's called Avatar. I don't remember the exact name of this car. It's an electric car. It has a lot of biological influences, right? You can see almost it's nice curvature. It almost looks like a cell. It reminds me of a human cell. But to get to this step, to get the car to look like this, You cannot simply just start with the idea of a car. That's not how it works. If I was to look at this picture and I were to tell you this is a car, I don't think you would believe me. Quite frankly, I don't believe myself that this is a car. This is an engine. And an engine provides the means to doing a lot of things, but it's by no means a car. So to really make a car, you need to have a convergence of a few different disciplines and a few different mega industries that are coming together to enable the convergence and build a car. So for instance, you need a chassis, you need wheels, you need tires, you need a steering wheel, you need a good infotainment system, right? You want to connect your phone, you want to find your location where you're driving, you want to listen to music, you need seats. There are a lot of other things that you need to make this a car, but I think you get the concept. Well, when we started the business, we were pretty adamant that bioprinters, and for those of you who are familiar with it, it's going to change the world itself, right? So if we just make great printers and great bio inks, then we will see a whole new industry take off, and everybody will, cure tons of diseases, and the world will become a better place. Lesson number one, it's important to be naive when you're an entrepreneur. It's very important to be naive, because if you're naive, you really put yourself to the max and to the limit, and you work hard because you believe you're going to reach that goal. I think that from our perspective, we were quite naive in the beginning, but what we were fortunate about and what we did that others didn't was that we started spending a lot of time with our customers. So we started selling these bioprinters, the BioX, or even earlier, the Incredible, and the BioInks. And for every printer we sold, or for most of the printers we sold, we started to travel to those customers and those users, because we wanted to spend time with them, because we wanted to understand what are they doing with these products. And after many, many years, essentially after about 3 years, we had spent about 250 days on the road every single year, just visiting customers. And that enabled us to start developing a picture. And that picture is what I'm going to be sharing with you next. But essentially, we started seeing that our precious bioprinters that we thought was going to change the world, they had a part in the story, but they were by no means the only story. Because what we saw is that there are a lot of researchers that were placing these bioprinters on their lab bench. And then they brought their cells and they mixed it with their inks, and then they put it in the printer, and then they put their file in the printer, and then they printed a structure. And then they took that printed structure and then they dispensed different compounds on it. And then they put it in their live cell imaging system or their confocal microscope, and they did imaging of those tissues. And then they put it in the incubator, and then they let it grow, and then they visualized it again. And all these things were just being done continuously over and over and over again. And we started understanding and developing a bigger picture that the bioprinter has a part in this story, but the story is bigger. So what we did is that we went to work, and we started to looking into how can we provide more technologies, but also more user-friendly products to researchers and scientists around the world. So as we were visiting all of these customers and researchers, many of them said, okay, now we've printed the tissue, we're going to dispense the drug now. And we looked at them and said, how do you dispense the drug? And they said, well, we use a pipette. And then they had this huge pile of well plates full of printed tissues. And then they start, it's always the PhD student. The PhD student was sitting in the lab, and he was sitting in there late. And we would typically bring pizza with us, and then we'd eat pizza together, and we would help them, dispense these compounds or solutions or molecules or whatever they're trying to look for onto these tissues and into the well plates. And eventually, someone told us, hey, do you have perhaps a robot that can help us with that? If you help me find a robot that can dispense these compounds in a nanoliter scale, that will save me a lot of time. And that's essentially how we started entering a wide range of different fields. So what we did is that we acquired a company. And the company is called Dispendix. They're a German, very, very beautiful liquid handling robot company. They've been with us now for about 2 years. And they had this robot that could dispense nano droplets of compounds in a very innovative manner. So we essentially went from just providing the bioprinters and the inks to being able to provide workflows. And that's where the era of workflows comes from in our company and in the segment that we are now. And that's kind of how we're differentiating ourselves very well from other companies in this field, is that we don't just let our customers rely on us for one product or one technology. We want to be with our customers because we really love them and we want to help them and we want to work with them, because we know that information is going to be provided that's very, very valuable. And that's what business is all about. It's about going to the customer, delivering a product, and then listening to what the customer is doing with the product. Because if the customer is having issues or challenges, then you have to offer to solve them too. And then you're building a company. If you're just like others, where you're just delivering a product and then you expect the customer to figure it out themselves, you're not going to be successful. Or you could be successful, but it's going to be a very, very long and bumpy journey. With that being said, today ScellLink has gone from being essentially just a bioprinting company, which is what we started with, to being a complete package solution provider. And I want you to take a look, specifically the words in the bottom. Those are the most important, because we have structured ourselves essentially in 3 business areas. The first one is disease and tissue modeling, where we can create tissues. And if you guys remember from our mission, it's about creating biology. Well, the bioprinting enables us to create biology. The second business area is biosciences. And in biosciences, we do disease and tissue analysis. So we work with sample preparation for omics workflows, or we do live cell imaging. We do single cell sorting or single cell printing, bioreactors, NGS library prep, and many other similar analysis related offerings. Again, this is about understanding biology. So we have creating and understanding. And lastly, to master biology, we really have to provide it at an industrial scale, and of which we have the industrial solutions part of our business, where we offer anything from diagnostics and ways to manufacture large-scale assays or diagnostic tests. Today, we're producing many of the COVID tests out in the fields in different countries, and even down to multiplex OEM manufacturing for different disease testing kits. So lastly, it's about disease and tissue diagnostics. And then this goes around, right? So when we're better at diagnosing diseases, we know how to model that disease, then we can analyze the disease, and then we can get better at testing that disease. So being part of a customer's journey is essential, because that enables us to understand their story, understand their needs, and understand their value, and then do something about it. But there are a lot of companies out there, and you got to remember this, there are a lot of companies out there that they listen to the customer needs and they think it's complaint, and they think it's negative. That's not the case. The customer is taking their time, they've taken their effort to tell you about their problems. And you should feel honored that you're the one who's listening. And then you have an opportunity to do something about it. One of the major challenges in the bioprinting industry, for those of you who remember this, printing doesn't used to be that easy, right? Bioprinting used to be very, very complex and challenging. And back in the days, you had essentially companies like Envision Tech and Regenue and a few others. They built very large, complex systems. And I remember the first time I saw a bioprinter, I think it was a Regenue system, 2014. They needed 2 PhD students to run that thing. One was making the models, writing the G code, understanding what we're printing here. You know, the wasn't wasn't anything of a library or anything to work with. And the other student was looking at the nozzle and positioning the cartridge and doing all these things to make sure everything is perfect. And that system was $150,000, $200,000. So what we realized at Cellink was that if this industry is to take off and actually become something substantial, we have to make it super user-friendly and very, very cost-effective. So what we did is that we developed a bioprinter for $4,999, and that really made our business take off. What lesson did we learn? Well, we learned that disruption can only be successful if the timing is right. So for instance, if the other printer companies wouldn't have been around, if there wouldn't have been expensive systems on the market, then I don't think that there would have been an equal strong demand for those types of systems. So, but because there were so many different printers out there that were so expensive and so hard to use, that created an opportunity. And all we were just opportunists who jumped on it, and we made it happen. We made it happen very quickly. And with that, we believe that it was very important to essentially start a movement. And what I mean by that is that we were good at going to the customer, doing installations, listening, teaching students, teaching professors, and really helping the field take off. Being always available. I mean, I had phone calls from customers almost 24/7. And that was a pleasure because I really enjoyed learning, and I still do. I still do take my customer calls. You can try me. But starting a movement was all about bringing the prices down, bringing the level of sophistication on the, well, not sophistication, it's still a very sophisticated field, but the level of complexity down to something that's very user-friendly. And of course, for those of you who aren't familiar with bioprinting, bioprinting is all about being able to create these medical devices and implants that I talked about in the challenges slide, where we said that it's all about personalized medicine. And I really do believe that one day we will be able to print these tissues for implantation. And as you saw in the video, we're using a cartilage-based biomaterial and ink to print a very small ear. You'll see here Hector, our co-founder, he's kind of touching it after it's cross-linked. It's an alginate-based ink, so it cross-links and it feels a little stiffer, almost feels like cartridge, and then it's me talking. But again, the successful part of our business was really bringing ourselves to the customer and then bringing our customers together. We had quite an early idea already back in 2016, and that was that we need to celebrate all our customer success, and we need to make sure that our customers, their research is always at the forefront, and we bring it forward. And of course, during all of these journeys, as you can see, we visited a lot of labs. These are just a fraction of them. But we believe that building a community was going to be the most important, because if people like working with our products and they can talk to each other about working with our products and tell each other what they're doing, then they can make each other thrive. And our job in that community will just be to connect the dots and to make sure that everybody has what they need. And I think that was a big realization for us, because many companies in the field, again, prior to Cellink, they were essentially trying to just keep people's research as independent as possible and not communicate, not share, not be transparent, not be communicative about what's going on in the field. And I really believe that we changed that notion. We have something called the Collaborative Partnership Conference, which is essentially a program that we started all the way back in 2016. I thought that it would be an honor to invite all of these researchers that we meet and that we have in our community to come out and present their work and tell us about their fantastic discoveries and their progress in the field. So once a year, we arrange this for all of our customers. We bring them to one location, typically Miami, for a 2-3 day conference. They present their data, they present their findings, they talk about collaborative projects, and they really make each other thrive. I think that's been a very successful part of our journey. And looking at the field, how it's grown, and I unfortunately don't have the latest numbers of this. I need to update this graph, but the latest numbers are impressive. It has continued to grow 2019, 2020, and the number of publications in this field has just taken off. I'm not going to take credit for this. I know that there are other companies and other researchers out there, and it's really the researchers that have increased the use of this field. But I do believe that once we disrupted this field, we could bring the prices of these technologies down substantially, and that enabled us essentially to provide it at a lower cost, and others to lower the cost as well. And that's an important aspect, because I believe that that's the reason why we see that this graph is pointing up. It's because more researchers in more locations could do research with this type of technology. And of course, you see already back in 2006, you see so few people and individuals were using this technology, and so few publications were coming out, and it was moving so slowly. So it really got an effect from bringing the prices down and opening up the industry. So what are some of these researchers doing? And of course, I think I have a part of talking a little bit about science, because I know that this is a scientific audience, and I think I'm kind of obliged to talk a little bit about science, even though I try to avoid it as much as I can, because I am not an expert in the science. I'm an expert in the business. But bioprinting for us is all about creating a smooth and user-friendly workflow. And what we've done with our products is that we've essentially coupled them together all the way from the blueprint. So if you want to print an ear, or if you want to print a nose, or whatever you want to print, providing the blueprint, having the right bio ink. And bio ink is something that we're going to talk about a little bit as well. And then placing it in the printer, doing the print, cross-linking, incubating, and after 4 weeks, you have a construct. And the fascinating part is, of course, you can do live cell imaging. You can do a lot of different assays on this to understand if your printed structure is, in fact, what you wanted it to be. And in this case, we wanted to print cartilage. And what we see here after about 28 days, we see the signs and we see the right compositions of that printed tissue structure that resembles cartilage. And we see that these cells are performing the functions that we're expecting them to in that environment. So you could essentially say that bioprinting is another means of creating the ideal environment. And again, back to our mission, it's about creating the biology. The biology is already out there. It's existing. It's happening all the time. But these human cells, if they're not placed in the ideal environment, then I don't believe that they will thrive, and they will not do the things that we want them to. Looking at, for instance, at Newcastle University, I know Professor Che Conan, and I'm so honored to have him in our customer group. They printed the first human corneas using the incredible bioprinter and a novel bio-ink composition specifically designed for corneal tissue. And it's exciting to see how they were very early on in this. I think they published in spring 2018. They had worked on this for about a year and a half, and it's a very inspiring story to see how they could take this revolutionary translational step in the industry of corneal tissue and really make a movement. And I know a lot of companies now that are taking this research to the next level, where they want to use this for implantation into patients, because there's a massive need in corneal tissue. If you remember, one of our goals or one of our challenges that we're working on is to create tissue for implantation. This is a step. This is a step in the right direction. Another one is University of Plymouth, where they're printing essentially skin models that can be used for topical applications for skincare products. And this is really fascinating too, because I think that many cosmetic companies have now been banned from using animals in the development of cosmetic products. I think that in the next 10 years, we're going to see a massive decline of use of animals in research. And I saw actually just 2 years ago, the EPA came out with a statement saying that they will also reduce or I would say perhaps increase the burden on companies who are using animals, and they're trying to promote the less use of animals for cosmetic treatment development and even pharmaceutical development. I know that there are better solutions out there today, and I know that many of you researchers who are listening in today are working on these types of solutions. It's all about bringing them to the market, and this is the right time for the biological industry to really shine. Another really exciting example is, of course, the printing of heart tissue. This is the University of Perth in Australia, where Professor Barry Doyle is printing heart patches, and of course his dream and his vision is to one day print heart tissue for repair. Another exciting example is of course and a very relevant one today. I think it's hard not to talk about the pandemic on a daily basis. So kind of here's my contribution to the daily pandemic conversation. But as you see here are lung alveoli. And the video here is showing, as the air is coming in, it's providing oxygen to the vasculatures around them. It's oxygenating the blood, and then the blood is pumped around in the body and oxygenating your muscles. So quite fascinating, because what Professor Jordan Miller was able to do with the technology that we now offer in our Luminex platforms, he was able to create that same environment, right? Where you have that pulsating alveoli, it's oxygenating the blood around it, and that landed him is actually on the front page of Science magazine. So super exciting, very, very futuristic research, and it's making a tremendous impact on the research field. And we're proud to see so many researchers now using that same Luminex platform to do the same things in their fields, because there are so many different fields that could really use vasculature printing, and we see that field really taking off. I'm going to take you guys a little bit through memory lane. This is the last thing I'll be doing. I think I'm coming up on time, but I want to share a little bit about the glamorous startup life. So for those of you who are interested in going into business, I want to bring down your expectations a little bit. Business is very different from academia, and academia is a great place to be. Don't get me wrong. Academia is a place where you have great colleagues. People typically don't want to take your ideas. Maybe sometimes they do, but most of the times you're in a relatively protected environment. In the business field, it's a dog-eat-dog world, and you have to be ready for a lot of change and a lot of uncertainty. But it's funny. This is the picture from where we started the company. It was a tiny little room. This was back in 2015, right even before we started innovating with the bioprinter platforms, the inks, drawings. So this was Hector, this was Yvonne, another colleague of ours, and this is how we really got started in that little room. But the startup life is not glamorous, and I got to tell you that. When a lot of people think about the 24/7 customer support, most people think about the picture on the left. You have a support call center, and you have a lot of people sitting and answering these calls and speaking calmly. Well, the reality is Hector and we took most of our support calls in the car, driving to the next customer. So we would spend most of our day going to the customer, printing with them, teaching them how to work with the products, understanding their needs, listening to what their future needs could be, and then he would be late, and we would, if we were fortunate, we could have dinner with the customer, and then after that, drive to next. So we drove through many nights, and during these nights, Asia business opened, Europe business opened. So that means that we were getting support calls, and we needed to take care of challenges. So we did most of these things on the road. Same thing here, rapid prototyping or fixing things. If we were going from one customer to another and the demo system would break, there's no other way to fix it. I tell you, I have a preference of cars when I drive, and that is I always rent a Tahoe. It's a big car, and I need to work on the I need to work on that. But we typically do that because we pack it full with printers or products that we want to demo. But it also has a regular outlet in the back. So the back console has a regular electricity plug, and it's like a 120 volt plug. The fact is, you can use that outlet for a soldering iron. So Hector, he would sit in the back seat and solder and fix many of the motherboards that could break during the demo trips while I was driving. And I remember especially one time we were going to Hershey Med School for a demo, and it was a very, very bumpy road, but we made it. We was soldering, soldering pieces everywhere, but we made it. It was a good demo, and we closed that deal. Business travel is, as you know, it could be very, very, very pleasant if you're traveling business class or first class and you don't have much carry-on. Startup reality is that's not the case. You're always traveling with boxes. You're always trying to carry everything. If you're fortunate, you have a trolley. In this case, we were rolling our boxes and something else. But as you're going from conference to conference, you got to remember, you don't have money. So you got to carry everything as much as you can. And I can tell you, we've been probably thrown out of at least 30, 40 Ubers because we try to get all of these things into we wouldn't even order the the Uber SUV. We try to order the regular Ubers. Service centers, right? Perception. It's tons of cool desks and equipment and people sitting and fixing stuff. It's not the reality. You got to be able to fix problems right away. And you got to be flexible of doing that. This is an early morning in Austin, Texas. We had a problem with one of the systems. We picked it up, brought it back into the Tahoe, folded the seats. Let's get back to work. We got it done. We fixed the challenges. We delivered the product a few hours later. The customer was super happy, and of course, before that, the customer was a little bit annoyed because they were going to print with cells. So they had prepared a lot for this study. And fortunately, we were nearby, and we could help them get this resolved. Successful printing, successful visit. We were so happy to get this done with them. Shipping and handling. Many times we hand deliver the products, and I think it's an honorable way of doing it. It's part of the fun to being able to provide the customer with the product in hand, and we, as a matter of fact, we still do that in some cases. We bring the product with us and we hand deliver it to the customer. And lastly, conference calls, right? So Hector and myself, we spend a lot of time together. And as I mentioned, over the last couple of years, we do about 200, 250 days per year on the road. And that means when we're saving money, we're sharing rooms. So we share rooms on every trip that we go. It works. It works really well. We save the money. We can talk about the business. We can talk about the growth, help each other out with challenges. And of course, sometimes the challenge is that we don't have enough room to take calls. So in this case, sometimes you got to take it out of the bathroom. A very important thing to remember specifically in business is, of course, the customer obsession. And before I leave off, I want to tell you just one last thing, which I've brought with me on my journeys, and which has been very helpful to me. And this is something that my mentors, they taught me at a very, very early age as I was starting with business. I'll read it to you. The only way that we can live is if we grow. And the only way that we can grow is if we change. And the only way that we can change is if we learn. And the only way we can learn is if we are exposed. I want you to take that with you, because if you want to be successful in business or in general in life, something that I've learned is that you will only be successful if you keep learning. And doing that when you're exposing yourselves to a lot of new environments and a lot of new challenges. That is when you learn the most, and that is really when you grow. So take that with you. I want to thank all of our customers around the world. I mean, all the hundreds, now even the thousands of them. Thank you so much for believing in us and for choosing us. Your loyalty means everything to us. We wouldn't be here without you. So we're thankful for that. And I'll leave off with this awesome picture. You'll find our products in a lot of places around the world. So even with Dr. Merkel, the Prince of Sweden, even in Fast and the Furious, Hobbs and Shaw. Take a look at that movie. You'll see the BioXs. You see that up in the left corner. And even in the Big Bang Theory. All right. Thank you so much for listening in. I hope you're still awake.
Thank you so much, Erik, for the amazing talk and the journey that you had to bring up selling a really fascinating company. So we got many questions. Before that, since I want to introduce some stuff to our audience. You can take a break and then we can continue with the Q&A.
No, go questions. I'd love to do questions.
Yeah, for sure. But let me just. Can you hear me, guys? Because I think my connection is not very stable now. Can you hear me? Yeah.
We can hear you.
Okay.
We can hear you.
So yeah. So let me just go to the Q&A box and then ask the questions from the audience. I got a problem. Mohsen, can you go ahead? I got a problem with my. Yeah.
Sure. Well, it was Erik. It was a very inspiring and amazing talk. And then if you look at the chat box, you will see that our audience have also enjoyed your presentation. I really like those the last few photos that you shared with us. Life as a startup is not always. I mean, it's not there is another side to a startup. You have to work really hard to gain. It's not like you sit in your office and expect the success to come to you. It's you have to go after success, and then it needs a lot of hard work. You will see, the CEO of a company comes and gives a talk with this nice, suit and then, tie and everything. But it's not all this. This is a hard work that is behind this face. So it's very inspiring. It's great for. I learned a lot from your talk. Thank you very much. So there are many questions from the audience that I would like to start with. So the first question is from Lindsay Marshall. First of all, she thanks you for such an informative and engaging talk. This is an exciting technology. So the question is about the regulatory process, and then what she asks is, realistically, how far away are we from the use of bioprinted tissues for implantation, particularly given the news this week that FDA approved genetically modified pigs for similar purposes, but human tissues would seem more appropriate with less risk. What are your comments on the regulatory body's position on bioprinted tissues, or in general bioengineered tissues, and the future?
I think that's a great question, and as always with FDA, it's a companies typically they kind of work in the dark, right? I mean, you don't know what guidelines are going to be set until everything is set in stone. So I think for bioprinting, we're still a few years away from a guideline showing up. Just a few years ago, the FDA released a guideline for 3D printing. So 3D printing of plastics or of synthetic materials or metals for medical implants. And I think we've learned a lot from that guideline. But as of now, I think another 3 to 5 years at least until we see something for FDA on bioprinting.
Yeah. Human, do you want to?
Yeah. So no, thank you so much. I got a little bit disconnected, but I think it's now stable. So yeah, the next question from Didarol is thanking you for the great talk, and I think he knows you because he was the student of Paul's in biomaterial class 12 years ago in Chalmers and Hector's classmate. So
Wow,
yeah,
small world.
yeah. So, and he's asking, he's telling that it's really fascinating to see, I lost his, fascinating to see how far cell ink has come and how much cell ink has empowered the bioprinting research field to accelerate in the last 5 years. Could you comment on when did you guys have that aha moment of the first product, and how long did it take for that product to come from idea to market?
So I think there's a lot of research that was done before the company was started. So both in biomaterial research, we bought a lot of patents, and we've done a lot of licensing from the research field, not just Chalmers or in Sweden, but we've also done it from other universities like Rutgers, etc. So a lot of our technology and success is based on the fact that we've been able to license technologies from universities and from researchers that have done kind of the groundwork. And that's an important thing to remember, that it's, in the biomedical field, things move quite slowly. And if you can license something from a research group or academic group that have done the groundwork, you'll be taking you could be taking a first mover advantage by speeding up your progress, so you don't have to start from scratch. So leveraging really researchers and universities will help you to save money and to speed up your research.
Great. Again, he has the follow-up question about, could you comment on what do you see as the biggest roadblock for bioprinting technology to translate from research to clinical application, and when we can expect to see that happen?
So I think one of the major challenges with of course the clinical applications is this unknown FDA guidelines. The next step of what they will determine is acceptable for bioprinted tissues. What I do see is that a lot of companies are now preparing themselves for clinical trials. So there's been a lot of our customers have worked with printing tissues for early in vitro studies, and now they've done very early preclinical in vivo evaluations, and some of them want to now go into clinical trials. So I think the field is moving very rapidly. I see some applications which are ahead of others. So for instance, skin tissue. So skin tissue transplantation is a very important one. Cartilage is an important one, an interesting one where a lot of researchers are spearheading. And then lastly, of course, ocular tissue or cornea. So I think that those three applications might be the ones that will reach the clinic the fastest. When it happens, really hard to say. Really hard to say. But I think in the next decade, we're going to see those types of tissues or implants.
Okay. So thank you so much. There is a little bit scientific question about vascularization of the teeth tissues. How do you see the challenges, and what do you think about that?
Vascularization is essential if you want to print something bigger than like a millimeter or just a few millimeters, right? So when we started off, we had this extrusion-based bioprinting, and that was essentially the BioX, the incredible regular pneumatic, where you dispense essentially a material with cells into a structure. And it's quite hard to reach this small level of vasculature that you want to reach to keep these tissues alive. So we went into other fields of bioprinting. So for instance, light-based, we call it DLP bioprinting. We're using light to cross-link. You can create small lumens, you can create small vasculatures, and you can start making these small organ-on-a-chip models. That's one way, right? So you can then perfuse these models with media and oxygen to make sure that you can keep these tissues alive. But if you want to go even lower scale or smaller scale, we partnered up with a company called Prellis Biologics out of San Francisco, and they're doing holographic printing. So they're printing down to even 2-3 microns of resolution. So you can really print capillaries. And that's fascinating because now you can start printing microvasculatures, and then you can build the tissue and place the cells around it, and you're really starting to create microenvironments. So I think it's a very early field. A lot of researchers are thinking in the right steps when it comes to the need for creating vascular tissues, but it's going to take a little time until we really get it right.
Yeah, thank you. And that was the question of also another audience that asked about the resolution, if you can improve the resolution. So now you just answered that the Perlis is doing the holographic printing with the micro scale resolution. So yeah, there is another question from Michael Barton. He thanks you about the presentation, your presentation. Do you see a future when someone can plan a certain amount of time ahead, give a cellular donation, grow the required tissue graft, and implant this tissue, given the numerous FDA and HC, etc., hoops to jump through? How many years away do you think this might be?
Really tough to say. Very
Yeah.
good question. I ask myself that question a lot, but it's very tough to say. But I do see a future. It's quite nice to summarize it that way, because I see the future as where you can even take stem cells from born babies, right, or from the umbilical cords, store them in a cryo freezer, and then store them for in case if you need them for organ transplants in the future. And then you should be able to take these stem cells out, differentiate them, print organs, expand them, and then of course implant them back into the patient. I believe that that's a future, but it's far ahead, but I think it could be possible. There's a lot of amazing things happening in the stem cell field.
Yeah. So thank you. Anon from Finland is thanking you about your presentation, and he has two questions about he's talking about the metal implant that like cobalt that they had the poisoning problem, but he's talking about the patient-specific hydrogel that can be used in a long run as a bioprinted tissue. Is it something possible? And also the second question about using UV and UV toxicity, if we can avoid this by using other photocross-linkable polymers or hydrogels.
Three good questions. So the first one, cobalt. I'm not too familiar with cobalt implants. Of course, if there's toxicity, that's a challenge, and that's kind of our mission here at the company is to try to avoid those types of materials in the future. And I think many of you researchers who listened in today, it's quite exciting that many of you are probably working on potential other solutions that can avoid these types of metals. For hydrogels that can do the job instead, I think there will be a lot of exciting materials coming out in the next coming years, and that have already come out, where you can change, for instance, the mechanical properties both after implantation or prior to implantation with different cross-linking methods and different binding methods. And that, of course, brings to your question of the cross-linking. UV has never really been our favorite. I'll tell you, we were introduced to UV because some researchers were asking essentially for the regular 365 nanometer, kind of the conventional UV cross-linking method, or 405 nanometers. It's there are different schools using different ones, but we were never so fond about it because of the cellular response or the potential damage that could have on cells. So our preferred method was always calcium chloride, using alginate as a component. It's quite cell-friendly. It's quite biocompatible. So that was always our favorite. Of course, if you're working with cardiomyocytes, that's a challenge because the calcium is gonna kill them. So you got to look into new innovative cross-linking methods. But I agree about UV. UV has never been a favorite.
Yeah, thank you so much. And another question from Aya. She's asking about you during your presentation. You talk about sitting with the customer, talking about their needs. She wants to know that, who exactly were the customers you talked to? Industry, what area of their focus, and who? Yeah.
Everything, everything, and everywhere. I mean, it was. We started with the academic, right? So initially, the first year or two, majority of our customers were academic users. So anything from Harvard, MIT, North Dakota University, Texas A&M, Florida A&M, you name it, the whole list. So most academic institutions in the U.S. And we sat down with if we were fortunate enough, we got a little bit time with the professor. And of course that was quite pleasant. They had really amazing futuristic things to talk about, and sometimes we were fortunate enough where they invited us for a dinner, or we could do dinner together, and they would tell us their career path and how they brought new technologies to the market, and that really inspired us. Other times it was just with the students, sometimes with master students, PhD students. They were always working hard, and they were, we tried to help them as much as we could, sitting in the hood and doing pipetting with them and things like that. But I mean, that was for us. It wasn't a matter of it was time well spent. It was time very well spent, and we're still very close to many of these people. We still look forward to visiting them after this pandemic, and stay in touch with many of them.
Great. Yes. So Julian has a question about pandemic. She's asking if the COVID pandemic happened in 2013 instead of being happening now. How do you think biotechnology, as you imagine it would be in 2030, would manage to help humanity in overcoming this disease?
2030 or 2013?
30. 30.
30. Okay. Ooh, good question. I think the fact that we were able to develop a vaccine in the matter of 12 months is very, very impressive. I mean, that itself gives a lot of hope to humanity. It's very, very impressive. Now, I think that in 2030, I got to be a little cautious here, because my personal belief is that I believe that we're going to have a lot of other pandemics coming. I think that we've opened up a box of something here. But I think that in the future, we will be even better. And we will have some kind of libraries from all the genomics work we've done. We've probably even looked into proteomics even further. And we will have some libraries that can help us to propel the development of vaccines and treatments. That's what I think. 10 years is a long time. So 10 years is not a long time, but it is it's quite a long time if we think about where we are with genomics and other medical fields today. If we look back 10 years ago, I mean, the field of genomics was almost nothing. It has grown so massively in the last couple of years. The same thing with regenerative medicine and many other fields. So I think we're kind of we're getting more into the fine-tunements of a lot of biomedical engineering and medical industries.
Thank you so much. Josh has a question about the liquid handling technology that you're using. You said that you partnered with the company, or you acquired a company. Is it the microfluidic based liquid handling technology?
It's not. It is, well, okay. I mean, I guess depends on how you define microfluidics, right? We're using one of the companies we acquired is called Dispendix. They're using a small well. So it's a very small well, and you fill that well with a reagent, and then it has a little hole in it, which is about 60, 70 microns. And then you apply a pressure and you dispense droplets. So I guess it could be considered a little bit of microfluidics. The other company we just acquired now about 6 months ago, called Cyenion, they work with microfluidics essentially. It's down to picoliter droplet placements, and they're using glass capillaries. They're very, very, very finely manufactured to be able to dispense very exact droplets.
So much. Mohsen, it's now your turn. Please go ahead.
Well, Well, it's Human knows that I always have many questions. That's why he let. He let me ask questions. In the end, because then I'll take too much time. But you answered most of my questions. But uh, I have a question which revolves around your first sentence, or probably a few first sentences. Aim big. So I really like, so be ambitious, aim big. So you aim big, you want to have a very big company. And I was always thinking about, well, the growth rate of a company. So you aim big, but you should have the infrastructure and everything ready, but you don't have the infrastructure at the beginning. And then the company grows really fast, especially your company. I see that over the past 5 years, you have had a tremendous growth in your company in terms of the number of employees, the sales, that all the numbers are growing really fast. How did you manage to deal with this growth, this rapid growth, which is not very usual in not all, but the majority of biotech companies? There are some challenges when a company grows really that fast. So maybe you can touch on some of these challenges and then just talk about how you overcome these challenges so that you're where you are right now.
Very good question. You're absolutely right. A very rapid growth doesn't typically happen in the biotech industry. Things take very long time, and it's very incremental changes and improvements and things like that. And you test technologies, and then you test it again, and then you want to make sure that it really works, so you test it again, and then you go. So I think some of the growth challenges that we had was I kind of categorized the growth of the business into few eras, right? I haven't gotten there really to name this yet, but I'm somewhat of developing an idea. I'll probably write a book about it maybe in the future, but it's about eras, and I see these eras in amount of employees and type of people that we had. So the first era was, the startup era. It was kind of from 1 to 10 people. Everything was so quick, and you throw everything you got into this box, and you just make it happen. And no matter what it is, if it's you got to take a flight at 3 a.m. and you got to get to the other side of the world to fix this one product because you have 10 products in the field, which means that if one is broken, that's 10% of your business, right? So you sacrifice everything. And in that era, you're really giving it everything you got, and everybody you work with are so close to you, right? So 10 people, so you know them, everything about them by heart, and they know everything about you. And then you grow to be 25 people, and that's kind of another era, right? Because when you're a 10 people company, you don't have a logistics department, you don't have an operations department, or a big financial department, or administrators and executive assistants and things like that. You have essentially the entrepreneurs, and then you have maybe a programmer, a mechanical engineer, maybe a biomaterial scientist, and a senior scientist. But then at 25, things get a little weird, because now all of a sudden you start to make titles, and you start to categorize yourself as something. Right now you're becoming something. You have a story. You've come from something, and you start to understand that there is definitely there is a field growing and happening, and your company could become something, right? And you're not just an idea or just a fad. You go in places, and then you have to give people titles and start making departments. And okay, you three, you're building printers. You have to build 3 a day, and you three, you have to send invoices and send POs and do the supplies. And the challenge there is, of course, you have to constantly upgrade yourself. So you have to look at the team and say, okay, the team that we were 6 months ago is perhaps not adequate to where we want to go. And you have to be transparent about that constantly. So you have to portray, and you have to show that vision that you want to think big and you want to become big. But that's perhaps not always everybody's life, right? And not everybody want to be part of that journey. So you have to be very transparent with each other, and that requires very good communication. So when you're 10 people, it's easy to communicate because you talk to the team every day and you sit around the table and say, what do you want to do today? Well, I want to build a printer. Okay, great. What do you want to do today? I want to do some marketing. Great, go do marketing. What do you want to do? Oh, I want to sell. Okay. But then when you're 25 people, you're losing a little bit of that, right? Because you can't sit 25 people in a circle. It's gonna take the whole day. So you start doing managers, and you're starting to delegate. And when you delegate, all of a sudden you're distancing yourself from the core team. And that's where a lot of businesses typically start having challenges, when they see that the entrepreneurs or the CEO, CTO, they're distancing themselves from the business, the people who are actually doing the great work. So we were very late with hiring layers of managers. It was Hector and myself. We were always part of the crowd working, doing the work, delivering to customers, building the products. The next era is 50 people. And then things get really weird. Then it's, the people that you've worked with from the group of 10, and then to the group of 25, you might not see them anymore. They might work at a different site. And then, of course, the next era is 100 and 200 and 300. So we're in the era of 300 now, and I think that in this era, it's about going back. And that's really exciting, because when you're coming up to this stage, all of a sudden you have 330 employees in the group. Wonderful, lovely, lovely people. And I haven't met all of them, but I look forward to meeting all of them. But you're feeling a little bit distanced from the business. And that's when you feel like you have to get back to it. So that's when you want to go back to customers. You want to spend time in production. You want to spend time with operations. You want to understand where are the challenges in our business and where are the challenges out in the field. So it's an interesting concept. I think it's, whatever you do, you always have to be close to the business and where things are happening.
Well, that's true. That's true. Thank you for your very comprehensive answer. And I mean, to me, it looks like that it needs a lot of effort and dedication, especially from those the co-founders of the company. I mean, I can imagine. I mean, you showed some pictures that you and your partners were working pretty much 24/7. That will have effect on your personal life as well. So how do you manage these? How do you balance your personal life? You want to have your life too, right? I don't know if you have a kid or not, but they will take some of your time. So what are your thoughts on managing time and balancing your professional life and your personal life?
I was very fortunate to meet a woman who was very patient, and I love her for that. She's we made a deal that I believed in this and I wanted to do this. When we met, it was just at the start of selling. So we made a commitment that we will we wanted to try this out, and we would give it all. And looking back at it now, of course, we're happy that we did, but it's been very challenging. I see her maybe at most half an hour a day. I see her 15 minutes in the morning before I leave, and then I have 15 minutes when I come home, and then the first thing I do is just go to bed. So it's, I try to be at work at 7:30, and I try to leave work at 8:30, 9 p.m. So well, a few more years like that, and of course I'm on my way, but it's I think it's required if you want to think big.
That's what I wanted to hear, and that's what I wanted to convey to those who really want to start a company. This starting a company needs a high level of dedication. It's not like you have to sacrifice part of your life. If you want to be successful, if you want to be someone like Erik, if you want to be someone like Mark Zuckerberg and then others, it needs a high level of dedication in your life. You may need to spend your weekends. You may need to, forget about going out with your friends on vacations. You need to work, but towards the a bigger goal, bigger aim. So it's all a decision that you have to make, right? And then you will see the outcome. Erik has he made this decision long time ago, not long time ago, 5 years ago, I think. But now look where he is. Now it's up to you where you want to go, right? It's and
True.
both whatever decision that you make is good. It's not,
Exactly.
but just make
There is no wrong decision, but you
exactly.
got to make a decision.
Yeah,
It gets bad. I mean,
yeah,
it's gonna you're gonna have times where you're just. I remember. I mean, just 2 years ago, we were during these. It was a very rough time. It was a very rough time. Hector and I were on the road. It was introduction of a new product. And with introduction of new products comes, of course, a lot of challenges and teething problems. And I remember I was, we had all these customer visits and servicing visits, and I had a fever, and I just wanted to die. But I had to get to the lab. I
yeah,
had to fix this. And Hector was, should I carry you? Should I, what do we do? We have to get there. So, and you're sitting there and you're sweating and you're just, you're crying almost, and you're about to die, and you fix these products, and then you get out and you hop on a plane, you go somewhere else, and then you do the same thing again. And eventually, of course, the fever is gone and you get to eat dinner, and you feel a lot better. But it breaks you down to absolutely bottom. And you have to be ready for that.
exactly, exactly. One more lesson before we conclude this amazing talk is uh, think about who you want to be partnered with, right? So if you have a fever, you want a partner who carries you towards the goal, right? This is something that is very important. So you want a partner who is always there with you. It's not all about money. It's not all about prestige. It's about goal, and then having a mutual goal, and then having someone who is always on your side. And then this is something that is very important in my opinion, and I think that's what I'm hearing from Erik as well, about this forming a company. So think about, make a decision. These are a few summary comments probably. uh, Make a decision what you want to do with your life, and then the second one is choose a good partner, right? And these are key. And then of course there are so many other technical things that you have to, of course, know how to run a business. But these are the things that I learned from Erik's talk today, and then from his comments. Thank you very much, Erik, for your very interesting and very inspiring talk. We are very happy and pleased to have you in our e-seminar series. For those of you who missed this talk, maybe due to connection issues, we recorded the video, this talk. It will be posted on our YouTube channel. Thanks to Erik for agreeing for us to review, to record this the talk. Also, don't forget our next speaker is Patrick Bedford. He is a Canadian regulatory expert and the founder and principal consultant at We Can Reg Consulting Group. It's going to be a different talk, I think. So I'm really looking forward to that. And then also we have many uh, excellent speakers coming up after Patrick. So we had a very great start with Erik, and then we're looking forward to the next round of talks. Thank you very much, everyone, and looking forward to seeing you next week.
Thank you
Thanks for
so
having
much.
me.
Bye
Thanks,
bye.
everyone. Bye.
Bye.